If you are watching this, then you should probably know beforehand that the video this video is a response to is 4 hours long, so as required rating goes, it's pretty intensive. It's also really excellently made, and I do recommend it out of my own appreciation for it. I've made one video essay about Assassin's Creed so far, and it's not nearly so in-depth or long-winded, and my range as far as the series goes is much more limited. I did stop after Black Flag, remaining more of an outside observer than an active player, and I have not regretted that decision since. But you'll pry Assassin's Creed 1 from my cold, dead hands to give you an idea of how attached I am to it. It is still one of my favorite games of all time, even if the direction the series went in ended up leaving me dissatisfied. I am still head over heels in love with the story of this game, and I love watching content creators dive in and realize that no, the series didn't just get good when 2 came out in 2009. In particular, I'm creating this video as a response to LazerzZ, or maybe just LazerzZ, a prominent Assassin's Creed content creator, and specifically his video, Assassin's Creed 1, a misunderstood masterpiece, the ultimate retrospective and analysis. A fantastic work, but one that nonetheless left me with a lot of things to say, because while I do think the take on the game presented is respectful and appreciative of its art, I do think there are several critical misunderstandings presented within it. If you are a watcher of LazerzZ or Mr. Welford himself, I would like to preface this with an obvious disclaimer. No disrespect is meant. I've never done a response video before, and whether I do one again or not will be a matter for the future, but I wanted to do this here and now. People do tell me I can have a condescending tone of voice, or that I can be rude on occasion. I'm not saying that's my character, I'm saying I've been known to come off worse than I mean to. So I want to emphasize beforehand that I do not mean any ill will or disrespect for this content creator. On the slim chance this video takes off, please don't enter this man's comment section and be a pain in the ass. I'm making this video because I liked his, not because I hated it. So, without further yapping, let me get into it.
Because I fucking adore Assassin's Creed. The game from 2007, not the heavily flawed franchise at large that murdered my family and is wanted by the police in 13 countries.
Same, dude. Same. The major issue that kept cropping up throughout the video that I discerned was the reading of the assassins, the characterization of the Brotherhood and its ideals, not to mention the characters who prop them up. Just within this one video essay, I saw you read a lot more into the assassins than was ever really intended by the game, and create narratives that weren't actually there. Saying it like this makes it sound like I don't genuinely believe Assassin's Creed does have a narrative about the Assassins and Templars, which it does. I just believe that the most prominent idea it raises, that assassins have to truly understand the forces of the world and the nature of man to destroy evil, is best read in that simpler fashion, whereas I think what you did was travel far further down the morally grey reading. The way you present the assassins almost comes off as villainization.
But it's a parallel in the sense where kids are indoctrinated into the assassins, which is completely opposed to their ideals. It's yet again another subtle critique of the Brotherhood, both in the Animus and outside of the Animus. They seek freedom, free will, yet they force their followers to follow. It's such an interesting concept.
Listen dude, you have obviously played a lot more Assassin's Creed than I have, not to mention done extensive research into the historical aspect. So maybe I'm wrong and this is laid out in one of those spin-off games I haven't played, or the comics, or whatever. But you really emphasized the word indoctrination during that whole spiel when, as far as I can tell, Al-Mualim's Brotherhood did not at any point enforce obedience nor adherence. Yeah, in the modern day, Desmond implies the assassins are incredibly sheltered and strict, but also in the present day, the Templars can literally just snatch you off the street if you're not careful. As far as the assassins as a whole go, particularly with Altair's era, there's no evidence whatsoever to say that assassins couldn't stop being assassins at any time and just leave. For trying to present this as a multifaceted scenario, you're doing a lot to try and present the assassins as basically a cult, and that isn't helped by the way you describe Malik.
Malik, however, uses the Creed as a shield, a crutch. He sees nothing but the Creed, and through this line of thought, it blinds him. Both Altair and Malik have the same fatal flaw, a misunderstanding of what the Assassin's Creed truly means. However, in Altair, it manifests as an arrogance and superiority to those who blindly follow the rules of the Brotherhood, and to Malik it manifests as a blinding loyalty to a set of beliefs he doesn't truly understand either.
You have extrapolated an entire character arc here from 2 scenes, really just one, and in fact just one line of dialogue.
Stop hiding behind words, Malik. You wield the Creed and its tenets like some shield.
You do it again all the way at the end of the video, 4 hours in.
Knowing Robert is headed for Arsuf, Altair pretty confidently wants to race there. Malik, however, is still cowering behind the Creed, behind his master, not willing to take the initiative, something that was one of his flaws from the very start.
Except that it's not. This is literally the only time Malik does this. His behavior at the beginning was not cowardice or hiding behind the Creed. He was trying to keep Altair from making preventable mistakes that put their mission at risk. I know 2 things can be true at once, and my reading doesn't necessarily negate yours. but at no point does Assassin's Creed imply that Malik's understanding of said creed is insufficient, let alone as anemic as Altair's. And his reaction in the second scene, while obvious in its denial, is still understandable given that Altair is telling him to mistrust the man who essentially raised them. You're trying to build a narrative and then say the game is creating that narrative.
And then the game sets out to critique the creed itself.
But it doesn't. It really doesn't. If it did, I wouldn't mind it, but you're way ahead of where Assassin's Creed 1 is with this. This is a thing you do throughout the video, reading into interactions to try and say that the game is drawing attention to some flaw with the assassins or their creed, but 7 or 8 times out of 10 it isn't. And in a lot of those times, you're reducing the assassins as a whole to their central creed, and forgetting that there's a lot more to them as an organization and as a way of life than just the central maxim. The way you talk about these supposed critiques feels like it was derived from the wider Assassin's Creed franchise than simply what the game presents here, which I think is the most reasonable cause to assume. But in examining this one game, it's leading you to extremely bizarre readings, especially when it comes to Al-Mualim and the assassins. Don't get me started on that spiel about castles.
I find it interesting too how the castle, a symbol of arrogance and control, is diametrically opposed to the ideals of the assassins. Of course, this is done on purpose, the castle made even grander in its design than real life for the game to explore this very idea. The assassins seek freedom and say they work for the people, yet they live in a larger-than-life fortress from which they wage war, essentially.
Brother, what the fuck are you talking about? Castles don't represent anything. They aren't diametrically opposed to anything. It's just a building, man. Furthermore, the fact that there is a castle here doesn't serve to examine some great hypocrisy on the part of the assassins. It was 1191, dude. The internet didn't exist. If you wanted to raise an organization, especially one where professional killers reside, it's gonna have to have walls and space and some guards. This is literally the only way the assassins could function in that era. And speaking of Masyaf...
But what Masoon says is reasonable. Al-Mualim did cause the people here to fall into harm's way. The hubris of working from a castle among a village is what brought harm to those who live here.
See, you literally just made that up. Masoon does not say anything even remotely resembling this, or mention the castle at all, either in his preaching or his interrogation. Because, again, if we must discuss the castle for some reason, what the fuck do you want them to do? Hang out in tents? You keep mischaracterizing this scene even further, despite the fact that I know you know what they actually say.
Al-Mualim goes on to prove this when he kills the man for speaking out against him, for having free will to oppose the assassins, although not directly cause harm to others.
Except that's not why he kills Masoon at all. You can literally hear Al-Mualim say that he stands accused of betraying the Brotherhood and opening the way for the Templar attack, which he admits to.
You stand accused of betraying our Brotherhood and opening the way for our enemies. How do you answer to these charges?
I deny nothing. I'm proud of what I did. My only regret is that they failed.
His sin isn't believing differently than Al-Mualim or the assassins, it's getting a lot of people killed in extremely direct fashion because he opened the freaking gate. While Altair got all the slain assassins and civilians in Masyaf killed indirectly through his arrogance and thoughtlessness compromising the Brotherhood, Masoon played into that error and took direct action to make that happen, breaking the very same tenet and even saying he was proud of it. The craziest thing about this is that you didn't need to edit the context of this character dying. His preachy speech has him try to tell the citizens of Masyaf that Al-Mualim has betrayed his people and is lying to them. That part specifically was very true, as the end of the game would show. You could have remarked on how very prophetic this moment was, and how it suggests that even people who sound fanatical and crazy can have some useful insight, something the game actually delves into with the Templars. But instead, you just stripped the scene of important context and used it to paint Al-Mualim as a dictatorial control freak who can't stand people believing things he doesn't like.
Altair thinks in a very black and white way. He's convinced himself assassins are good and everyone else is evil, probably because that's what Al-Mualim has taught him, linking back to the discussion with Masoon.
Again, I have to question, where the hell did you pull this from? If you stopped at Altair thinks in a very black and white way, I'd have nodded my head and agreed, but you take that way further and describe an Altair that my eyes never saw. All of this, after long enough, starts to sound a bit like the evil Dumbledore problem. You know, how very singular-minded, black and white thinking fans of the Harry Potter series read the final book and were informed Dumbledore groomed Harry to go die at Voldemort's hands. For all of J.K. Rowling's extreme flaws as a person, and misdeeds since becoming wealthy, even she understood that reducing Dumbledore, or anyone else for that matter, to a pure good or pure evil was stupid. But people with their heads up their ass only really focused on the revelation itself, and began to backfill every other interaction Dumbledore ever had with Harry with manipulation and misdirection that wasn't really there. You're doing the same thing with Al-Mualim here, taking his betrayal and his flaws as a person and taking that to mean that every interaction he ever had with Altair was either lies and misdirection or teaching him to kill thoughtlessly because assassins good, other people bad. This really isn't all that reflected in any of their conversations. Yeah, obviously Al-Mualim wasn't being 100% truthful all the time, but the evidence points towards him still being an overall good mentor to Altair when he tried to be. The even crazier thing about this interpretation of Al-Mualim, though, is that it kind of drops off halfway through. You do accurately assess the scene where it shows Altair the apple.
Al-Mualim still has Altair in the palm of his hand. While he is correct, the plans of the Templars viewed as a whole are very clearly ones that must be stopped, he too has the same goals and uses their methods. Altair is just not quite there at understanding it yet. It's a classic manipulation tactic. Altair feels distrust, and so Al-Mualim lowers his guard and lets him in, tells him the truth. But what Altair is unaware of is that it's not the whole truth and it's deeply twisted. But this allows Al-Mualim to regain the trust of Altair, even if only briefly, to continue doing his bidding.
See, that's a 100% correct recap of what actually happened in that scene. I don't begrudge calling Al-Mualim on his manipulations when he is in fact manipulating. I just don't understand why we had to go through castles are evil to get here. It's so weird because only an hour in, you give one of the most perfect readings of Al-Mualim I've ever seen.
This is a clear example of Al-Mualim speaking to a manner of the creed which is deeply misunderstood by Altair, and he argues it so passionately. I think it shows that this man believes the Assassin's Creed. Truly, these are his ideals, but tempted by the apple with the knowledge it grants him of men's madness and folly, he caves into control as a means to reach a peace he feels is more important than the means in which you reach it. Again, playing back into the core theming established by the verses from Ecclesiastes. And this acts as a direct parallel to Altair by the end of the game, a mentor who ultimately disintegrates the foundation upon which this current brotherhood is built, one of the few instances where later story additions actually bolster the previous ones.
Yes, I love this so much. It would be so easy to read Al-Mualim just based on his betrayal, and assume everything he said prior was a lie, or a veil of assassin rhetoric to disguise purely Templar ideals. I think the best way to read his actions, and the way that's truest to the text, is to view them not as the true colors of a power-hungry madman, but as the result of cognitive dissonance. Al-Mualim does genuinely believe in the Assassin's Creed and the betterment of humanity, but he's also bitter and cynical and down a long road of despair. The point is made many times that the times in which this man lives are heinously violent, with reminders of human suffering quite literally everywhere, and the carnage seems endless. Even with the brutally concise means of effecting change that assassination makes for, it makes sense that no matter how much he believes in peace through freedom, he assessed that it was woefully out of his reach even as the mentor of the Brotherhood, and so chose to use the apple even if it otherwise went against his beliefs. The philosophical conversations he has with Altair, as well as his dying memory corridor, enforce this. He knew it was wrong, but felt he had no other choice, and laments that his pursuit of wisdom led him to such a path. So what the hell was happening with the rest of the 40 minutes after this? What was all that garbage about indoctrination and black and white thinking? What's weird about all this extra reading into characters is that, when it comes to the Templars, the inverse happens. You stop reading in depth and simply look at them as puzzle pieces making a singular point. But before I make my ultimate assessments of the Templars versus yours, let's take some time and look at the individual targets. I wasn't surprised to find out that Garnier is one of your favorite assassinations. He's one of mine too, and I think the same can safely be said for a lot of the Assassin's Creed fanbase. It's simply a twisted, gut-wrenching scene with layers. I do, however, wish you had stepped back and taken a broader look at his actions. A few things nagged at me while you were analyzing Garnier. At 1:59 o'clock, you make a point of phrasing.
What we believe to be a corrupted doctor experimenting on patients in a late Middle Ages hospital within the poorest district of a city falling apart due to a holy war. What we believe to be a corrupted doctor. What we believe to be...
As if this isn't a perfectly accurate assessment of Garnier de Naplouse in this game. I let it slide, and then it happened again at 2:15.
It does wonders to give us insight into Garnier as a man. Or so we think.
I mean, I think it does speak pretty clearly to his character. Cruelty usually does.
As you blend and stalk Garnier, you can hear him make his rounds, speaking with the patients, and we end up discovering something interesting.
Ah, he's awake.
It's you!
And how does it feel to be whole again?
I don't know how you did it.
It wasn't easy, I assure you. You fought hard at first. Most do. But now it's done. The hard part's past.
I owe you my life. I'm yours to command. Thank you. Thank you for freeing me.
Thank you for letting me.
Some of these men and women are thankful to him. They don't seem to be in pain, and Garnier is happy with these results. Is he helping these people? What the fuck is going on?
I do wish at this moment that you had pointed out that the patients Garnier visits are randomized, and that for every one he meets with that is seemingly healthy and grateful, there's 2 calling him a monster or begging to be allowed to leave.
And how are you feeling?
What have you done to me?
Yes, the pain. It hurts at first, I won't lie. A small price to pay. In time, you'll agree.
You are a monster.
I've been called worse.
Garnier is genuinely concerned for his patients, Altair stating that they'll be free to return to their homes, believing he is saving these people. But Garnier retorts that they didn't have homes. They were from brothels or prisons or living on the streets. They were people with mental illnesses and trauma. Garnier believes he was helping them, that they were like children to him, saying that they were trapped in the prisons of their own mind.
They'll be free now to return to their homes. Homes? What homes? The sewers? The brothels? The prisons that we tied them from? You took these people against their will. Yes. What little will there was for them to have. Are you really so naive?
I'm happy enough with your overall assessment of Garnier, because by the end of it, I don't think you excused any of his actions, so I'm not accusing you of that. You sum up the scene well enough as a means for Assassin's Creed to remind players that most people they come into conflict with aren't evil, and some genuinely want a better world. But I think most of us would agree that Garnier and men like him are horrifying because his actions are in direct defiance of his words. He says he wants to heal these people, yet he brutally cripples a man for life for wanting to get away from him. Even if he's sincere in his belief of wanting to heal men's minds, and that's if he doesn't translate healthy to subservient in his head, which there's evidence to believe, he still destroyed this man's ability to walk. Whatever mental damage he could heal won't bring back the entire independent, abled life Garnier just stole from him. Talal reinforces this, whether or not you take him out before or after Garnier. Quite unlike Garnier, I think I like Talal a lot, for being the first Templar to recognize the threat Altair is, and to try and go head-to-head with him, only to lose because for all that he thinks he's hot shit, he's dealing with a guy who kills with extreme proficiency. It's hubris, plain and simple. Talal has a lot of Garnier's same excuses, that it was somehow lifting up those at the bottom of the ladder into a better life. But just like with Garnier, he's a predator working towards his idea of order through base and utter cruelty. He highlights that the same evils can come about, whether the perpetrator is haughty and cold or takes on the guise of a kindly old man. Like Talal, Garnier has zero respect for the autonomy of his supposed patients, and fully admits to preying on the most vulnerable aspects of society. Prostitutes, prisoners, the homeless, the ill and the indigent.
You mean the people made to suffer your cruel experiments? They'll be free now to return to their homes.
Homes? What homes? The sewers? The brothels? The prisons that we dragged them from?
You took these people against their will.
Yes. What little will there was for them to have.
I wish that these elements had been underscored a little more in your analysis, if only because by the time we reached Juair, I wasn't really convinced you took the right lessons from Memory Block 2's assassinations. Abul Nukud is one of my favorite assassination targets, and I'm pleased to report that I agreed with everything you said about him. It is surprising to me though that you didn't spend more time on him. Before I get into it, I want to take a moment out of this response video to say that the set piece for Abul's assassination is right up there with Garnier's intention and execution. I love it so much. You wander in knowing beforehand that your enemy is a rich guy throwing a party, so you already have an idea in your head of what's going to happen. There will be music and dancing, you'll track the guy to a secluded spot, and probably slit his throat or something, and then he'll stumble out into all the dancing and partying, clutching his throat. Everybody just laughs, haha, look at the entertainment, and nobody even seems to realize anything's wrong until the man falls over dead while you slip away. A karmic end for a rich asshole, right? But then you actually get into this party, which is actually fucking cool by the way with the water fountain dispensing wine, nice little theological social commentary there, and Abul, who has to be some of Fred Tatasciori's best vocal work, if I'm honest, addresses the people. It all sounds very generic, look upon me my subjects with joy, until he switches up and starts fucking tearing into these people, reading them for filth on being rich parasites who fund war, whose gruesome effects they're nice and insulated from.
You give up your coin quick as can be, knowing all too well it buys the deaths of thousands. You don't even know why we fight. The sanctity of the Holy Land, you'll say, or the evil inclination of our enemies. But these are lies you tell yourselves.
And taking time out of their day to be bigots too.
Oh, do not feign ignorance. Do you take me for a fool? that I have not heard the words you whispered behind my back. Well, I have, and I fear I can never forget. No, all this suffering is born of fear and hate. It bothers you that they are different, just as it bothers you that I am different.
The food and wine should not be poisoned. He sets his archers on the partygoers, and all fucking hell breaks loose. It's chaos, people are panicking and dying, and you're in the middle of it. The music here is excellent. Starts off all partyish and then changes to sound deranged and unsettling. One of the only times the score breaks its very consistent tone across the game. And when you get back to the bureau to describe the offense to the Damascus Rafik, Altair is actually a little wound up.
Word has reached me of your success, Altair. Abu Nakud's reign of terror is at an end. I'm glad to hear it. He killed them. The men and women at his party. It was poison. A coward's tool.
With every other target, he's stoic and professional, regardless of what he's seen or what doubts he's voicing. But with Abul and the mass murder, he sounds shocked, even a little unnerved as he describes what went down. I love it because Altair clearly did not expect what actually happened any more than we did. But to expound further on Abul himself, he's the closest thing to what you, LazerzZ, keep describing the Templars as in this video. A man who uses ugly methods but does genuinely want to make the world a better place, who has salient points, and who a reasonable player might actually side with. When Abul starts his speech, it's clear he has smoke for the Crusaders, but he has smoke for the Saracens too, and in particular he has a clearly articulated disgust for the rich upper-class citizenry he's forced to rub elbows with, and he calls them on funding a war where people they don't care about die, fighting people they don't know, and he states he intends to build a world in which everyone is equals in harmony, unsubtly calling out the homophobia he's been enduring. And he's right to, since in this time period if somebody was gay and didn't have Abul's obscene riches, they'd have very quickly gotten executed by the state, lynched by a mob, or both in one go. While Garnier and Talal preyed on society's most vulnerable and tried to justify their actions, Abul is one of the only targets in the entire game to take out his ire on arguably the people most responsible for the shitty state of the world at the moment, the rich elite. He says flat out that his conscience could not take being expected to finance the war, especially all for a god who is said to hate him. I mean, I'm just saying, you know, he's kind of iconic for that, is he not? I mean, is he not? Come on, dude has a little bit of a point. Abul Nakud is the one who probably best exemplifies the Templars as their spokesmen keep propping them up. Noble men with noble ideas fighting for a greater good. Now, as to whether Templars actually deserve that assessment, well, let's talk about the next one really quick. You spent almost no time on William of Montferrat at all, which I think was a mistake considering he's one of the biggest bastards in the entire game, and in that I include Majd ad-Din, the next target after him who the game treats as an irredeemable murder enthusiast. You're right to point out how Altair's assumptions about William are incorrect, but William is definitely not one of those times where Assassin's Creed is giving grace to the enemy and raising thoughtful critiques of the nature of the conflict. His memory corridor is one of the best examples of a Templar talking out of both sides of his mouth.
The city belongs to its people.
William truly means well. Again, the game flips what you think about these men, because while the information we learned is technically true, the context in which it's performed flips how we view these people. It just works to show how important context and intent is when viewing the actions of another human being. How we learned these things comes from incredibly biased sources, people in the streets talking and gossiping. The actual intent of these actions and the actual meaning behind the actions could be entirely different when hearing it from the person responsible.
This is very interesting because you seem to take this at face value. The thing is, you're treating the bias of the people you learn information from as less reliable than the bias of William himself. But William himself has this to say.
The city belongs to its people. Stole their food? No. I took possession so that when the lean times came, it might be rationed properly. Look around. My district is without crime, save those committed by you and your ilk. And as for the conscription, they were not being trained to fight. They were being taught the merits of order and discipline.
So apparently, the city belongs to its people unless William decides they can't be trusted with it. The city belongs to its people until William decides that it doesn't. The city, he says, belongs to its people, but these people are dissatisfied and angry with his rule and think very low of him. His talk of his district not having any crime rings hollow too, given that the rich district has a higher concentration of thugs than any other. For gameplay purposes, this is to allow the player to easily build up a stock of knives, since sneaking into William's headquarters is going to require cutting down a lot of archers. For story purposes, though, it's to show how William's full of shit.
And as for the conscription, they were not being trained to fight. They were being taught the merits of order and discipline.
Mind you, conscription by itself is a very ugly moral issue and it's historically been pretty unpopular, but the soldiers William is talking about aren't even his. They're the kidnapped people Talal sent to Garnier to have brainwashed, wielding weapons Tamir put in their hands, and then William sees fit to execute the ones who aren't performing to his standards. Not exactly the better life the Templars keep talking about. And yes, I know that you do acknowledge how the wider web of the Templars recontextualizes the seeming noble ambitions of the targets Altair kills. I'm just saying that the reading here keeps stopping at surface level when it really could go deeper. But the biggest problem with this analysis of William is that it skips straight over that argument he had with King Richard, which is actually pretty important. If you pay attention during the scene, Richard is pissed the fuck off with William for an action which goes undetailed but is hinted at pretty thoroughly. This turns out to have been the massacre at Ayadie, in which more than 2,000 Muslim prisoners of war were publicly beheaded. Historically, this was actually authorized by King Richard himself, and it is one of many reasons why King Richard is still burning in hell to this day. However, Assassin's Creed puts this in the hands of William of Montferrat, which, I mean, fair enough if he died that year anyway. Now, Altair being a Muslim-born Syrian assassin whose homeland is nominally aligned with Saladin against an invading force, you personally would not have had to tell me, if I were him, to go kill whoever was responsible for that. I already would have been down in Akkar peeling his skin off and salting it. The game stops just shy of spelling it out, but it makes it very clear that William is a brute, and in making it clear he did this, safely casts away any idea that he's actually acting in the interests of the people. Actions speak louder than words. William can say whatever the hell he wants, but every time he has a chance to act, he uses force and intimidation. When even King Richard, the main figurehead of the war, is calling you on your actions being both vile and strategically unsound, you know there's not much left to be said.
Here, let me show you.
Which is, I don't know, a little bit cheap.
Oh, it's cold as fuck, which is why I like it. Majd ad-Din is another target you spend almost no time analyzing, which is more understandable in this case since the game does away with introspection and exposes him as a sadistic ghoul. But I think it's important to watch what Assassin's Creed does with its Templars. It doesn't uniformly present quote-unquote grey characters to you and have you turn them over like a rotisserie, seeing good in their every evil. It shows you a variety of characters, from people like Abul who have relatable frustrations and are more sympathetic, to sons of bitches like Majd ad-Din, who are in it for the fun of public executions. Then it gives you characters in between, like Talal or William or Garnier, whose actions are inexcusable, but whose differing perspectives offer you a chance to see how men come to commit the actions they do, and whose differing justifications encourage you to look more closely and try to parse who's really out for good versus who's really out for subjugation, and where the two cross over. Getting you used to doing this is important because the game really tests this when it comes to Sabrand and Jubair. But onward we move. Well, actually, I want to stop for a second here. During the modern day segment, you said some interesting stuff. You and I have extremely differing opinions on how valuable the whole End of the World in 2012 plot thing was and how good it was for this game or the series, that's clear. But during that section, you bring up an email in Vidic's deleted emails folder. You know, the one from the crazy guy with the all caps?
I'm pretty sure the guy who sent the email is actually one of the witnesses of the DIA incident that is talked about a little bit later in the game.
I think you got this information from the wiki, which is also the same page which has the really basic factual error of what Denver is code for, which you go into in the video. I think both you and the wiki editors here, who don't cite any sources besides the emails, missed the very obvious hint here that Subject 16 actually wrote this email. The all caps lock text and the gibbering madman way he talks is the biggest hint, but also literally the only way a threatening email could come to a member of Abstergo staff from a sender unknown and not be immediately traced was if it was coming from systems beyond Abstergo's ability to spy on and scrutinize. The Animus fits that description, and we know from the Ezio trilogy that Subject 16 could hack it. The emails from Alan Rickon make it pretty clear that the presence of information that's damaging them concerns projects that had 100% mortality rates, aka no witnesses, and he himself raises the possibility that the leaks are internal. They are, he's just not grasping how internal they are. They're being threatened by one of their captives and they don't even know it because he's already dead. Now, back to Jubair.
You wonder, how can this person be sympathetic? How is the game going to turn us around so at least we think, yeah, I guess you have a point, like it has done so many times before?
Well, that's kind of the thing. It doesn't. There is this thing Assassin's Creed does where it presents you a range of characters who will tell you in confidence up to the point of their death that they are doing the right thing, and ask you how much that belief is worth in the face of their actions, or even whether they really believe them at all. Many times it presents you a sympathetic look at Templars and suggests that they might have a point. Jubair is not one of those times, and it's very clear here that you badly misunderstood him and the point of this assassination.
If this is the case, and Jubair must die for being wrong, is he then not unlike the books which Altair is so desperate to save, a source of information with which he disagrees? Which is a fucking good point.
My brother in Christ, no it is not, and nor does Assassin's Creed expect you to think so. A person could reasonably ask, if Jubair is wrong or lying, surely the game would have gone out of its way to show it. But that's exactly the thing, it does. Not a huge amount, but enough to catch if you're paying attention. The information you learn from your investigation paints a huge divide between Jubair's current actions and those who believe in them, and, rational people. It presents him as either a fanatical madman, a manipulative shithead, or both. You do one of the investigations and interrogate one of his most loyal followers, who talks like a fucking crazy person, which not only is something Altair calls out,
the words upon these parchments, they are poison. Jubair holds the cure. He'll free us from their lies.
It's nonsense you speak. You've lost your mind.
but which sounds disturbingly like the loyal followers Al-Mualim brainwashes in the end of the game.
No, not lost, but found. I see the world for what it truly is. He has shown me so much. I am illuminated.
Fanatic is all you are, and dangerous for it.
Gone to see the Master.
Was it the Templars? Did they attack again?
They walk the path.
What path? What are you talking about?
Towards the light.
Speak sense.
There is only what the Master shows us. This is the truth.
You've lost your mind.
You can also pickpocket a letter which concerns Jubair's wife, who's hidden away some of their texts so they won't be burned, which not only indicates that even people who know Jubair well think he's behaving irrationally, but presents him as someone who was happy to have a home full of books until recently. Furthermore, the letter unsubtly implies Jubair is going to kill her for this. You noticeably skated over both of these investigations in favor of another surface-level villain has some good points narrating, and that rubs me the wrong way. In the memory corridor, Altair points out this hypocrisy to his face, saying he more than anyone else should know what he's doing is wrong because he's the master scribe.
Then what?
You of all people should know the answer. Educate them. Teach them right from wrong.
His whole life up to this point has been books and learning. His sudden decision that books are evil and mislead people isn't a sincerely held belief. It's knowledge and education for me, but not for thee. Jubair's logic that all texts are full of lies and mislead people could easily be countered with the argument that men can also lie and mislead people without writing a single thing. So should all men be put to the fire? Of course, Jubair's willingness to do exactly that is the game's way of showing that he's much too far gone and has to be put down. He's essentially presented as a cult leader. At the very end stages of cult leadership, all rationality flushed away in favor of his cause. There is a reason that Assassin's Creed makes one of its last targets one of its most irredeemable men, and that's because the game now feels confident in asking you to parse words versus actions. You can call it paradoxical or black and white thinking to say that Jubair needed to be iced, but this is an easy mode kill. Men do not destroy knowledge unless they wish to create ignorance. We already know Jubair is doing this in service of his ultimate Templar plan to reshape the world. His behavior here is a means of undermining the citizenry's ability to educate themselves out from under Templar leadership. After all, if people can learn from sources the Templars haven't approved, they might eventually come to believe in or even act in ways the Templars haven't approved. This got even worse when you tried to continue this underbaked analysis in the Assassin's Bureau.
Such is the landscape of a madman's mind.
The things I've seen these past few weeks, it's as if all the land has gone mad.
And this is why we fight to end the war, that sanity might return. The people are desperate for direction. It's easy for men like Jubair to prey on this and turn them towards evil.
He did not miss even once here, and yet...
The Rafik in Damascus is an odd one. This is our final conversation with him, and he keeps referring to concepts like madness and evil to define what these men do, but I think this acts as a means to get Altair thinking, because he knows this is a really stupid and basic way of viewing the world, especially because of how he spoke to Altair at the start of the game. His stupidity and simplicity makes way for Altair to have a meaningful dialogue within himself about the events that he is seeing, and this draws very clear parallels between the Damascus Bureau leader's dogmatic view of the world and that of Al-Mualim's obvious dogma. He begins to pierce the veil of misinformation here.
Just shut up. Shut up. Stop talking. This is bad. This is so bad. You should have kept this out of the video. You should have edited this out. You should have edited this out. It reflects really badly on you. I can see the wheels turning in your head, and if the Damascus Rafik at this point had said something that slotted easily into your everything is gray, evil isn't real, everything has to be super complex, and we might actually be the bad guys here narrative, you would have handily praised it. But because he dismisses Jubair as a madman who espoused hollow views of a better world to rationalize his irrational actions, someone who preyed on the fear and anxiety of the people, a very reasonable assessment in the face of Jubair's behavior, by the way, you call him stupid and dogmatic. You badly mischaracterized both this NPC and Altair here because you didn't want to acknowledge that it doesn't fit into your narrative. You are so stuck in this thing where the core is everything is so gray all the time that you aren't willing to play ball when the game is telling you that's not always the case. It's very telling that you spoke very heavily towards what Altair is supposedly thinking here, but didn't actually quote him and moved on to the next topic. This is crazy.
It's interesting because he still never lets any of them go, despite the fact they are, in a way, innocent. While they do work for the target, they're not outright bad or even at all bad in a lot of cases. It's interesting that Altair still doesn't consider them entirely innocent. It allows us to see that even though he's changed for the better, the Creed still allows for some blind spots to be prevalent.
Except this moment isn't about the Creed. It's about practicality, which you remark on, even taking note that Altair wishes there were another way.
By the end, he's almost regretful, wishing there were another way, but knowing his mission could be ruined were he to let the person go.
Hell, the interrogation mission in Acre while hunting Garnier even has Altair say that he would let the man go if he could afford to.
Then you'll let me go? Would that I could.
Implying that it's not about innocence or guilt the way you're portraying it. The Creed isn't meant to be looked at as a singular guidebook on how assassins operate minute to minute. It's meant to guide their overall behavior and make sure they do the work with the right motives, which Altair at this point is indeed doing. You're doing the castle thing again, trying to tie things back to a central narrative when that's not really how it works, and not really necessary. That to the side though, I don't have any issues with how you treated Zabrand or his assassination, so instead I want to take another opportunity to gush about how this assassination is one of my favorites. Despite canonically being only the 7th target out of 9, I always kill him 8th, since hunting a paranoid wreck who's watched all of his allies fall one by one to the same man is most delicious when he is indeed the last in the 8-man string. It's also the hardest assassination gameplay-wise, in that even the optimal path to Zabrand is extremely easy to screw up and puts Altair at the most risk. If there's one thing I appreciate about Assassin's Creed, it's that it doesn't spare any expense to say that Altair can be a good person and a wise man, while still being the coldest motherfucker in the Levant.
Seems God favors your cause this day.
God had nothing to do with it. I was the better fighter.
Zabrand, one of the latest targets, is the polar opposite of Talal, one of the earlier ones. Talal seriously thought he could corner Altair and dispose of him, and ends up dying gracelessly with a blade in his back for the trouble, getting the memo way too late that screwing with Altair was only going to end badly. Zabrand, on the other hand, is probably the smartest Templar in the game. His fear of Altair is funny and a little unnerving, but it's inarguably the appropriate reaction. Zabrand trying to load himself up with 5 million guards and make a getaway, even at the expense of the Templar mission that he isn't even really all that into, is far and away the best chance he has got at not getting his throat slit. It doesn't work, but props for trying. The lead up to Zabrand's assassination is really hard to watch, because he's clearly too paranoid to see that he's about to kill an innocent man. The scholar even pleads with the gathered crowd to intervene, to say something, and none of them do, Altair included. With Altair, we know he can't risk blowing his cover and Zabrand getting away, but the rest of them are just scared out of their wits that Zabrand will attack them too. Also, alongside Abul, he's the most sympathetic of the Templars and the one whose goals are most straightforwardly noble, even if the execution is rough. His role in the big plot was to form a blockade and stop both sides of the Crusades from sending reinforcements, eventually starving both sides of manpower and forcibly halting the war. Had the Templars stopped at this and not went full speed ahead with the whole brainwashing thing, a reasonable player might have even sided with them. Zabrand as a whole is very pitiable, and it bothers Altair enough that he seeks some reassurance from Jabal. Talal accused Altair of walling off his mind, shutting out any distractions, and we can see from his conversation with Jabal that there might have been a little bit of a point there. Altair is clearly one of the most skilled killers ever, and he dislikes that doubt gnaws at him, but the Rafik assures him that acknowledging the humanity of his targets isn't a bad thing, and is proof of Altair's own humanity.
Ah, my friend, you are not meant to enjoy these grim tasks. Regret, uncertainty, sympathy. This is to be expected.
I should not fear these feelings.
You should embrace them. They are what keep you human.
We're gonna speed run the rest of my points about individual Templars now. I want to get into how you treat the actual Templar ideology and the organization as an enemy of the Assassins.
It could be something they retconned in a comic, knowing Ubisoft, but those aren't real and don't exist. When it comes to the Animus, Vidic is saying there is no room for misinterpretation, which is very much an analogue to the way that Al-Mualim views the Creed.
No, it isn't.
Washington himself. I just wish it wasn't done through a bloated 3-episode long dream sequence that is of no consequence.
Yes, but it gave us this, so I'll let it slide.
Real quick though, how are they communicating? Like, is Altair speaking English or is Richard speaking Arabic?
Richard was known to use a translator. However, it's also pretty reasonable to expect that Altair, as a master assassin, picked up French and English to better do his assassination and spying work.
Who the fuck did you kill? Seriously, I've never thought about this line before, but what the fucking hell is he talking about? Did he confront all of the Crusaders or something with the apple? I can't find anything about this online. What an insane thing to drop out of nowhere, you crazy bastard.
Dude, this is the mentor of the entire Assassin Brotherhood. I'm pretty sure he got that rank by being good enough at killing other people to teach other people how to do it.
Altair sort of flounders at the idea that peace through violence is a contradiction, to which Altair says some men cannot be reasoned with. Richard takes that point and refers to Saladin, to which Altair sort of goes, oh wait, no, I didn't mean it like that.
Well, yeah, because he actually didn't. It's crazy how this is the climax of Altair's character arc and you are still talking like this. Altair isn't floundering here, he's talking to a brutal warmonger who, of all people, has taken time out of his conquering to say, yet you participate in violence. Strange. I will remind you that he's saying this about Saladin when King Richard is the foreigner invading a land Saladin is defending. Altair is giving both of these rulers significant grace, considering that he earlier suggested just icing both of them to end the war quickly.
Would you have me kill them both then? End their war before it begins in earnest?
It's okay to acknowledge that. Alright, now for that spiel about Templars. Quite often, I see people who are willing to praise Assassin's Creed 1 on how colorful its morality is, how ambiguous things are between the Templars and the Assassins. And I don't at all disagree with that. But what makes me aggravated to no end is when it becomes what people assume the story is telling them in its entirety. For the record, I'm not sitting here saying Assassins actually are always heroes and Templars are always evil. That would be stupid and in direct defiance of this story. It's true that Assassin's Creed encourages careful review and not simply labeling one side good or bad without properly engaging with them. But I see so many people claim that the crux of Assassin's Creed's story is that the Templars have some good points, and everything is morally gray. That take is very prominent throughout the original LazerzZ video, but that sole video is not the reason I made this response. I made it because that take is everywhere. It's been the default way people talk about the OG Assassin's Creed for years, and it's exhausting, because it's a reductive take that quite often relies on making Assassin's Creed out to be deeper than it really is, and in the process ends up presenting it in a way that is not as deep as it legitimately is. If it sounds like I'm talking in circles, then let me get to the point. Assassin's Creed does not tell you as the player that the Templars might be right, or that their goals are even all that noble. What it does tell you is that evil is easy to fall for. Yes, it does dip its toes into that territory a little bit with its embrace of diverse thought on the matter, especially with Lucy and Al-Mualim.
But they are the bad guys, right?
If there's one thing I've learned since I started working here, it's that there's no such thing. It's all so relative.
What do he and his followers want? A world in which all men are united. I do not despise his goal. I share it. But I take issue with the means.
But Assassin's Creed, for all the dumbing down it would do in later entries, actually asks a lot of an inquisitive player, and properly addressing it or its characters relies not on hearing there is no black and white conflict ever, but watching what the characters say they believe versus what their actions say about them. A very quick way to display the disconnect I have with this video is to talk about a key phrase that has become more and more prominent in online discourse nowadays. Hopefully you've already heard it and practiced it, but if not, here it is. The purpose of a system is what it does. This phrase has become a common talking point specifically because it calls to cut through the bullshit. There's no point in claiming that the purpose of a system is to do what it constantly fails to do, is how the coiner, Stafford Beer, succinctly described it. It's become political in its usage for very obvious reasons if you happen to live in the Western world, but it's applicable anywhere. To start with an easy example, let's take insurance companies. That's a good one. Ostensibly, the purpose of health insurance companies, such as United Healthcare, in their own words, is to make sure people have access to high-quality healthcare at a reasonable price. In other words, to keep struggling people alive if they just pay up every month. What these insurance companies actually do is intake exorbitant amounts of money from people who have reason to believe they'll need medical assistance at some point, and then not only deny coverage for important and often life-saving medicines and procedures, but actually intervene to stop them so as not to even risk having to front the bill for a dying individual, despite that individual having paid them to do so. In case you missed a certain book published in 2010 or a very prominent assassination that occurred in 2024, the obvious point here is that you could not fix or reform the healthcare industry because it's not broken. It's doing exactly what it is supposed to do. Healthcare execs can say that the purpose of the system they get rich off of and enforce through lobbying is to save people from paying for unnecessary surgeries, as if they're some kind of great beneficiary, but the sole truth is that they are here to profit, often at the expense of people's actual lives. The same greed is why car insurance companies will simply say both parties are at fault in an accident, even if they're not, so that they can raise the rates on monthly insurance for years at a time even if no one was hurt. For a less dramatic example, you can apply the same heuristic to Ubisoft, or a lot of game companies under scrutiny right now. Clearly, what they would tell you is the purpose of their management and operation is to make fun games, but they make rushed out, buggy, formulaic games that leave players very unsatisfied and feeling taken advantage of, with more microtransactions than the average person has cells in their body. The latter is the actual purpose of Ubisoft as a game company. Trying to argue otherwise is just naive. The reason going into it this far is to make it clear why I confidently say the Templars have some good points is a reductive take, and why I tell you Assassin's Creed actually deconstructs that. The Templars as presented to us in Assassin's Creed are themselves a fantastic example. Your Chemo for the Masses segment, LazerzZ, is the first part where I thought you made a wild error in reading the text of the game, especially given that it's not very subtle about what it's doing. At 05616, you say,
that Vidic is nuanced. He's not just a one-note evil character, he has redeemable qualities even if he is a bit of a dick.
I like the way you start this off, but I think where you take it is a far cry short of where I ended up with it.
He does listen to Lucy and he does speak with Desmond. He's very beholden to the Templars and their ideals, he does believe in the Order, but that doesn't automatically make you a bad person, especially when what the Templars really want is peace.
That last part is where it goes off the rails, and I think it's what led to this video being so painful whenever it doubles down on this. You bring up how Abstergo, aka Templars, are extremely powerful and effective.
This conversation though does touch on something important. We didn't know yet at this point that Abstergo were Templars, but Lucy tries to imply it. They're everywhere, they watch everything, and I love this little tease.
How did they find me? I mean, I haven't been anywhere near another assassin for 10 years.
Use your real name?
Nope, not before today.
Credit cards?
Cash only.
Telephone?
There's no one to call.
Driver's license?
Motorcycle. Guilty pleasure.
There's your answer. Photo, fingerprint.
This is a drug company. What does Abstergo have to do with the DMV?
Desmond, these guys are everywhere. I'm sorry, I really can't talk about it.
Vidic admits as much in one of his conversations with Desmond.
We change the world, every day, in 100 different ways. Did you know that nearly every single breakthrough of the past millennia, be it medical, mechanical, or philosophical, has come from Abstergo or its predecessors?
That's a bold claim, Doc. Think you might be exaggerating a bit?
Not in the slightest. Oh, we certainly don't take the credit. That would arouse far too much suspicion. We choose our beneficiaries with great care.
Why?
Isn't it obvious? It means we're in control.
He basically spells out that the Templars are in power and have been guiding humanity for ages now. And then you get into this particular conversation with Vidic.
There's no true change to be had without comprehensive, systemic intervention.
Chemo for the masses.
Education, re-education, to be more precise. But it's not easy, and it doesn't always take.
The dude is fucking right here.
No, he isn't. He is very much not. Literally the only thing correct Vidic said here is that systemic change is needed to make a real change. Everything else he said was psychotic. Alright, I'm being dramatic here, but the game at this point is very much trying to highlight to you that the Templars have noble ideals baked into their organization. Ideals that serve as justification, not core belief. That's why they have him drop the word re-education as a nod to indoctrination and eventually outright brainwashing. Think of the word re-education and tell me what word usually follows it, and what context it's usually found in. Google it if you have to, I'll wait. This is also why they give you the ability to snoop through Lucy's and Vidic's emails to see what the Templars are actually like. Through it, you see that the Templars basically control the world already, a feature of the game you remark on, Lazers. Their big game plan is basically in its final stages already, with them trying to just skip to the actual brainwashing now, but by and large they already control the entire planet. And look what they've done with it! The situation in America is getting so bad that hundreds of people are getting shot trying to flee to Mexico, entire towns are being poisoned, climate change has ramped up so badly that hurricanes are a year-long occurrence now, a fucking plague wiped out Africa, and colonialism has been revived. This is the world as the Templars desire it, a nightmare for anyone without the money and resources they dominate. This drip feed of information you mentioned lets us know very clearly that the Templars have pretty much realized their goal, and that if they got what they're after by this point in the timeline, peace wouldn't even be on the agenda. The Templars, not always as individuals, but definitely as an organization, do not want peace. At a very generous best, they want order, and really even that's a stretch of the definition, with it being a lot more accurate to say that what they desire is control at any cost. I understand how the game can make players think this is the case, given how Al-Mualim describes Robert's vision of Templar ideology.
I do not despise his goal. I share it.
But reading into it further, literally in the case of the emails, demonstrates very handily that the Templar ideology is largely full of shit, as are most of its movers and shakers. That's the main difference between the Assassin's Creed and the Templar Code. The former pushes for wisdom, while the latter is a vehicle for men to grab power. But if a man tells you he has a good reason to seek power, how much should you trust him?
This is a great conversation because it's one of the few times you're like, shit, he's got a point. If you kill a tyrannical leader, odds are their spot is just going to be filled by another like them. But if you take over, you're able to create comprehensive systemic intervention. By controlling the systems that oppress people, you're able to create a better life for those who need it through re-education. But that requires getting your hands dirty, getting involved and taking direct responsibility for those changes, something assassins refuse to do.
First of all, this was a fucking terrifying thing to hear you say. Please never say anything like this again. But more to the point, remember what I said about the purpose of a system is what it does? The Templars are indeed in control of the systems that oppress people, to the point of controlling election outcomes. And guess what? The people are still being oppressed, worse than ever in fact. The views espoused by Vidic and by the occasional other Templar might serve as an interesting way to look at the conflict, but the Templar Order's actions and what they do when given power make it very clear that the system they want to put in place is not going to be one that actually works towards peace at all. It's going to be a worse version of what they've already done: ruin lives, destroy opposition, and achieve absolute power. That's the end result because that's what their order actually wants. Now, when said like this, it obviously sounds like the Templars are basically pure evil and that there's no nuance to be had, but that's not true either. Hindsight is 2020, and a lot of this information is only available at the literal end of the game. So let's look at another quotation to try and understand why I'm taking the stance that I do.
I applied my heart to know wisdom, and to know madness and folly. I perceived that this also was a chasing after wind.
For much wisdom is much grief. And he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow.
This quotation from the Ecclesiastes, which is so central to Al-Mualim's character, is why I say that the lesson Assassin's Creed 1 tries to leave its players with is that evil is easy to fall for. Knowing the true extent of the world's problems, knowing how far greed and violence can be taken, will leave you a mess. It's visible today in how many people are in absolute despair, as despots destroy indigenous populations and bake violence into the cultures they're charged with leading. Throughout your original video, LazerzZ, you hesitate a lot to use that word, evil. But I think you did so with the conscious interpretation of evil as a word applied to people, rather than actions. As Altair says, we are what we choose to be. Good men can choose evil, desperate men can choose evil, heinous men can choose evil. The old man of the mountain knew too much and saw weakness in himself and in humanity, and sought to correct it. Like Sibrand and Garnier and Abul, the things he saw tormented him, and he did what he thought was necessary until it was left to his best student to put him down and make a choice of his own. Choices are impacted by a lot of different factors, and the sum of a man is usually not what he is in his worst moments. Conversely, not every man is going to be Al-Mualim, a tragic hubris that caused a fall from grace in an otherwise respectable person. Some are going to be Majdadeens or Marquise Williams, or Jubairs, who take advantage of people in sorrow and use their knowledge to cause even more of it. The world requires men to be free so that the chance of triumphing over evil remains. This is how Assassin's Creed builds up the Templars as a worthwhile foe throughout ages of assassination clans standing to oppose them. They are tempted to evil by knowledge and can't pull themselves away. So I'm almost done with this video, but I want to do one last thing before I end it off, and that's to take a look at the one segment that I thought was important, but couldn't cleanly fit into either the Assassin segment or the Templar segment. It's when you bring up a certain part of Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
I used a clip from the Valhalla audio logs in my Revelations video, where Desmond ponders on this exact thing, only a few days before he'd give his life in the Grand Temple.
I fully admit to not playing Valhalla. Like I said before, I tapped out of Assassin's Creed after Black Flag, with Desmond's death being not the sole reason, but a huge one as to what made me give up on the series. I almost got into it again when Odyssey was announced, because, you know, Greeks and gay people, two of my major interests, but Ubisoft nipped that in the bud before I made my ultimate decision, and I remained separated from the series with a prejudice. So, this is some of my only experience with Valhalla in particular. Having said that, I will fully say that I did know there were Desmond audio logs, and this audio log in particular changes nothing about my perception of that game, or Ubisoft, or the point you're trying to make here. Because, and I need to stress this, that is not my Desmond Miles. Desmond Miles would not fucking say this, and you cannot convince me otherwise. In fact, fuck you, Ubisoft. I know what you were doing. Nostalgia bait like always, you money-hungry fucks. This does nothing for me. This does nothing at all. You want me to come back to the series? You want to dangle Desmond over my head like this? Yeah, how about you unkill him off and then we'll talk. Alright, let's get serious now.
Because choice is the central idea of our creed. It underpins everything, right? It's about free will. It's about seeing the evidence before you and saying, yes, this is what I want. Or, no, this isn't for me. But when you're born into a group like this, or any other, like I was, you get mixed signals. You get told over and over again, this is what we believe. These are the rules. This is reality. No deviation. And if you question it, oh, they look at you like you killed a puppy. That's hardly free will. It's a weird irony when free will is your central belief, but nobody wants you to believe otherwise. I don't know how to say it exactly, but I always thought there was something self-destructive about our creed. If free will is the most important moral guidepost we have, we should be free to ignore it. To choose submission, for example. You know what I mean? Like, we should be free to side with the Templars. If it's really my choice, I could do that.
Right. It's almost self-refuting. A democracy could democratically elect a dictator or choose to get rid of democracy altogether. Within our creed is the seed of its own destruction. That's what makes it powerful, I think. And fragile.
Right. The more freedom you have, the more risky it is, you know?
Ubisoft doing this and thinking they're clever would be just such a Ubisoft thing to do, but what they're doing with this is the same thing LazerzZ did so often throughout this whole video. Boil the assassins down to their central creed, boil that very wide-reaching creed down to a single idea, and then criticize the assassins as a whole for it. If we're all about freedom, shouldn't we be free to side with these guys who don't want there to be freedom at all? Ah, yes, you got 'em, truly asking the important questions. It's just such a rote and basic gotcha kind of reading of assassin ideals. It isn't a strong questioning and doesn't say anything significant. It's just Ubisoft having Desmond all but yell, "So much for the tolerant left," and then thinking they wrote the house down. The assassins do embrace freedom, yes, but their organization, their methods, their practices, their culture, and their pursuits are all multifaceted and are a lot more complex than just freedom good. If the assassins as a whole actually did engage in indoctrination and cult of personality, then there might be a point to all this postulating about freedom. But they don't, so there isn't. Desmond wouldn't talk like this because Desmond has lived 3 ancestors' lives and experienced the Brotherhood and its ideals from so many more viewpoints than the average assassin. My Desmond would not fall for garbage like this. He would not say,
"Choice is the central idea of our creed."
Because it's not.
I understand now that our creed does not command us to be free. It commands us to be wise.
It is, as you said earlier in the video, LazerzZ,
straight up ripped off to invoke a nostalgic response with little to no actual narrative purpose.
You, after all, would know better than I would. So, yeah, that's my only response to that segment on Valhalla. Or Valhalla as a whole. Fuck Ubisoft.
The Ezio trilogy is spectacular and manages to continue the story in a way that was never not satisfying and intriguing.
Well, you and I will disagree on that, but that's for next video. Let's back up a bit though.
If it speaks to you, then it doesn't matter in the slightest.
Concisely put. I mean, this isn't the most extreme case of it, but this is how I feel. Assassin's Creed 1 is hardly a hated entry, but it definitely is underrated, and even if I disagreed with enough of the original points to make a response video, you'll find no argument from me that this is a brilliant game.
I genuinely believe that this game is a masterpiece in the most unique of ways.
It really was. Ubisoft has fallen so far, but they really did knock it out of the park with this one. And I take a lot of comfort in that. Gaming is kind of collapsing now, and I believe it was a Ubisoft exec who had the unmitigated balls to say gamers should get used to not owning games. Well, I own this one, and even if I should be put in a position where it's simply impossible for me to engage with the collapsing game industry and its anti-consumerism, I'll probably survive. I have a huge backlog of games that are masterpieces, and I can just play those. This is one of those games, one that's fresh and engaging every single time I come back to it.
Seriously though, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sitting through this, for listening to what I had to say, for indulging me, and hopefully some of it resonated with you. Or maybe made you look at the game differently, or I don't know, maybe speaks to something you've always felt, but, you know, always that dismissed by idiots and dumb people. Yeah, that's right. We won this time.
It did. I found out things about this game I never knew, even in my 18 years of owning it. You really do have a very uncommon love for this game and a really genuine appreciation for it. Like I said in the beginning, I don't have any ill will towards you, and I'm really enjoying the other videos you have in the series. Granted, I haven't finished the others yet, given the length, but I'm getting there. If you, as a viewer, are interested in any of the content that was discussed here, LazerzZ obviously does have a Patreon, and I would like to see more of his content keep coming, so I do advise you to go hit up his Patreon. Assassin's Creed is a worthwhile series, even if you just want to hear about it instead of playing it, so go do it. Also, if you're interested in my channel, please leave a comment, a like, or even subscribe. I've got so many videos planned. Assassin's Creed, Resident Evil, certain Nintendo properties. I would love to grow this channel further, so please engage. And you have a wonderful day.